1 in 6 Americans right now are over the age of 65. Population in the U.S., the older population in the U.S. is growing faster than it has at any time since the 1800s. And worldwide, the number of people over 80 is expected to triple by the year 2050. So there are a whole lot of people who are thinking about their lifespan. So we're going to talk about various ways that the entrepreneurs with us are doing that. So starting over on the far left here, my far left, Mark Rivers is the CEO of Canyon Ranch. Canyon Ranch, everybody probably knows, is began in Tucson as a wellness retreat. There's one in Massachusetts, in the Berkshires. There are multiple around the country now, and a big one under construction here in Austin. To Mark's right, Peter Navarro is the co-founder and chief scientific officer of Evie, which is working on precision female wellness healthcare. Yeah, by identifying biomarkers that can sort of empower really targeted healthcare. And to Peter's right, Jim. I just totally blanked on your last name. Jim Donnelly is the founder and CEO of Humanot Health, which is based here in Austin. Jim is also, by the way, a 3-time Inc. 5000 honoree, with his prior company, Restore Hyper Wellness. So welcome, you guys. Really glad to have you here. Thank you. I want to start by just sort of identifying our terms. The term longevity that we're talking about. What is that? Like, are we talking about living to 100? Are we talking about something else? Mark, I want to start with you. Can we just set the table here of what we're talking about?
Longevity is my personal quest. I turned 60 this year. What's the fact I heard of the people in the history of planet Earth that have lived to be 65 or older? 1/3 of them are on the planet today. Think about that in the history of our planet, So that's sobering. But for me, longevity is really the quest to find to marry lifespan and health span. How do you live your youngest the longest? I'll never be younger than I am today, but I'd love to freeze where I am today as long as I possibly can. Not literally freeze. That's not a cryotherapy thing. But to me, longevity is the quest to live our maximum lifespan with the best possible health span we can to live our healthiest and happiest lives.
Can we define the term health span?
Health span is how long you're actually healthy. I don't count numbers. I don't have an app that tracks a number. I don't want to go somewhere where somebody picks out a number for me. I'm not interested in that at all. So go do some tests on an app and enter some information. 116. I don't care about that. If I live to be 96 and my last 7 years are in a chair, that doesn't appeal to me. So the question is, how can I be my happiest, my healthiest, my most active for as long as I possibly can?
Got it. Okay, I want to also just talk about the size of the market opportunity around longevity. And Jim, I want to throw it to you on this. As you're looking at it, Humanot is based on sort of it's a series of holistic wellness clinics, right? How do you, when you think about longevity as a piece of the wellness market, how big an opportunity is that? Why is everybody chasing this right now?
Some estimate it's trillions of dollars. Nobody goes to a dinner party anymore and not talk about, are you drinking, are you not, how are you sleeping? I mean, everybody talks about these things. My wife hangs out with her group of women. They call themselves the healthy hoes. They talk about hormones, and I think they talk about sexual health, but probably not. But anyway, this is on the top of mind for everybody. And I'll say this, I'm a little older, I'm 56. I've been to a 30th reunion, and everyone can relate to this idea. If you walk into that room and you see some people on this side of the room and you're like, good God, I cannot be as old as them. Like, no way. I don't know who they are. But they're your classmates from 30 years ago. And then you look on the other side of the room and you're like, hey, that looks pretty good. Like, I get it. Like, I've got a lot of good years. We're going to do this for a while. And to me, similarly, that's what health span is. It's living your best life for as long as possible. And it's going to be more and more possible. I just came from an event with Brian Johnson, which is the sort of never die guy. And now that might be a little freaky, some of the things he does, but longevity is going to impact everybody who embraces some of the things, and they're not that hard. It's about the foundational aspects of health. That's what longevity is. If you do those things day to day and you put them back to back to back, you are going to have better lifespan, better health span, and a better life. It's as simple as that.
I would also add probably how long can I optimize my brain and my body working together and not one declining before the other.
That's great. Peter, I want to ask you, so we're talking about health span versus lifespan and identifying sort of precision biomarkers. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means and how that ladders up to a better health span?
Yeah, well, we started Evie because the way that our current healthcare system defined health and disease is solely based on how health and disease manifests in the male body. So we were super interested on why do women feel bad? Why aren't they getting better? Why are they getting misdiagnosed? Why do the treatments not work? And it's because we've never actually thought, what are all of the unique signals that the female body is constantly giving off that we have completely ignored in our definitions of health and disease? And so what we are doing right now is starting to understand, what if we got better at measuring and tracking these signals that the female body is giving off? Then we can finally better predict, better diagnose, and better treat disease as it manifests in women. And I think it's incredibly important because what we are seeing with longevity is exactly what happened to the medical system, right? We need a female-specific lens to longevity. Around the globe, we outlive men by 5 years, and so it's incredibly important as we think about what are the metrics that we're tracking, how are we thinking about hormones, how is that affecting all the other metrics, what is the dance between progesterone, testosterone, estrogen, how is that affecting your heart, your brain, your bones? And so I think it's just incredibly important to bring that side of the story into this new trend.
Yeah,
Mark,
the focus on the women's aspect of longevity is the next chapter, without question. You know, it was a lot of the longevity noise in the space was all driven by the bros to start. You know, the tighter the T-shirt and the bigger the biceps, you know, the more longevity there was, right? So, but you know, and a lot of that was sort of a discussion in treating men and women the same way. They're not the same. They're not the same. And the idea, exactly what you're doing, and just, you know, there's a lack of medical research geared towards women. It's ubiquitous, or it's male dominated. You know, women react to heart disease, Alzheimer's different than men, dementia, all of those things. And so that's I think the next chapter that we're going to start to see.
Can I add one other thing on
absolutely.
data? So I'll give you a real world example. So we test 100 blood markers, 75 other diagnostics, and I just had my quarterly check-in with my care team. And so I got all my blood panel information, and we went through it. It was all green, by the way. It's basically our standard ranges are based on a LabCorp set of ranges, but then we have a second set of ranges. So I walked into that meeting thinking, man, I'm doing really good. All of my blood markers are green based on the standard set of blood panels. First of all, they don't measure a lot of the things that we measure, so we go farther. Second of all, if you flip the toggle on our visualizations, it goes from the standard to the optimal. On the optimal, about 40% of my blood markers suddenly became red. And so when you get those standard blood marker ranges, what they are trying to do is tell you how you're dying predictably. So they're telling you that for a 56-year-old, this is sort of pretty good. What they're not telling you is for a 35-year-old. By the way, I'd like to feel like my 35-year-old self. I don't want to feel like my 25-year-old self anymore. Like 35 is about right. But I don't want to be tracking to my 76-year-old, my 86-year-old range. I want to be in an optimal range. So I think there's just a lot of really great things happening in this space that are super helpful for people.
It's fascinating. I want to stay on this subject for a minute. Peter, you made reference to women in the U.S. outlive men on average by 5 years. I believe the number for women is 80 life expectancy and men is 75 currently, or roughly that. However, at the same time, women actually have shorter health spans than men, is my understanding, in the U.S. So what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think our ovaries age 5 times faster than any other organ in your body. And when your ovaries start to age, they kick off the process of this disbalance in hormones. And hormones affect every single cell in our bodies, from stem cells to how we react to anything. And so while that starts happening when we're 35, things start declining, right? And so we start experiencing, we have to think about our bones, we have to think about all these things that no one is telling you to think about because you're starting a career, you're starting your family, and now you have to think about your bones, you know? And so I think it's just extremely overwhelming to think about, and we just have to make this information accessible, and we have to have better studies.
That's great. Thank you. All right, Jim.
Can I add one other thing about
absolutely.
that? So at Humanot, we're about 50% women, 50% men. And I think that's not by accident. So I'll give you an example. When a man comes in around 50 and he starts asking about hormones, it's generally driven by a few obvious things. A lot of times it is sexual health, energy. The first question we ask them, where's your partner? Because it's actually an ecosystem that's important for your health. If a man is coming and fixing his hormones and he's not having his wife or partner fix her hormones at the same time, you are creating an existential issue. You are actually creating a path to early divorce. And so I do think that it's more complicated than just men, just women. It's about figuring out the ecosystem that helps you get on a good path and maintaining that good path.
I want to back up for just a minute and give you a chance to tell everybody sort of what Humanot is specifically doing, and then Mark, I want to do the same with what Canyon Ranch is doing in this space. But Jim, let's start with you. So you had a company, Restore, which began as cryotherapy and then expanded into sort of a wider wellness space, right? But then you saw an opportunity to create something, Humanot, that goes beyond that, and I wonder if you can just define what you guys are doing.
Yeah, Restore was 10 things under one roof, all the biohacking things, cryotherapy, hyperbaric, et cetera, et cetera. And we're 250 locations around the country, so I'm very proud of the fact we scaled that. Humanot, if you think of Restore as sort of the elementary school level of foundational biohacking and health and wellness, Humanot is kind of like the PhD. It's synthesizing everything in the space. It's looking at functional medicine. It's looking at traditional medicine. It's marrying the two in a way that uses data, so thousands of data points. It's very personalized, so we do personalized care plans. It's bringing in all of the tools, stem cells, hormones, peptides, prescriptions, supplements, all of these things, and then creating a plan for you that is married to coaching so we can also help you with behavior change. And my philosophy, and I've even written a book about this, that the key to getting people to live longer, healthier, is to make them feel better immediately and consistently. If you don't feel better as a part of your care plan right away, guess what you will not do? You will not follow that care plan consistently. So we do everything we can to get quick wins, to marry it to the data, and to continue to reevaluate, are we doing the right things? And we do that both in a clinic environment and we do it via telehealth. Our first clinic for Humanot is in Austin, Texas. Everybody here, if you want to come in, my compliments. I'm sure we can get a service for you. Our GM of the locations here, she's probably rolling her eyes right now. She's up there. That's her up there if you want to come in and get a free service. But it's a beautiful environment. It doesn't feel like a normal medical clinic. It has to be. Here's the final thing I'll say. The medical field is so gosh darn self-serious. It's like, for God's sakes, guys, like, if you want people to do things, it has to be engaging. I would even say it has to be a little fun. So how do we make healthcare and these things more engaging and fun? Because that's the only way you're going to get people to do it.
Mark, that's a good seg to you. So let's talk about Canyon Ranch.
Canyon Ranch, we're a wellness experience company. We started out with our first resort in Tucson, Arizona, 1979. When we first opened then, I wasn't a part of that, but when we first opened, we were called a fitness resort. Of course, now wellness is the most overused term since farm-to-table dining. So we now have 5 properties across the country, 2 resorts, a retreat. We operate the largest day spa in North America at the Venetian in Las Vegas. And we have under construction here today in Austin our first ever state-of-the-art ground-up resort development that will open next year. What we do is we thread the needle between resort hospitality and integrative wellness. You'll come to one of our properties. We have board-certified physicians. We have licensed dietitians and nutritionists. We have mental health professionals. We tend to look at the entire body, mind, and spirit as one human endeavor. So we have a longevity program, for example, in Tucson. You've done it, Tom. I've done it. I was the first one to do it. I did it for I started the program for myself and decided to share it with others like you. But it's the integrative aspect is very interesting. You know, I've had some sleep issues, and the way we tackle sleep issues for someone like me is to actually have our sleep doc talk to our nutritionist, talk to the mental health professional, talk to the regular physician, kind of bring everybody together as a team to tackle it, to find out that chances are it may not necessarily be something genetic related to your sleep. It might be environmental, it might be how you eat, it might be how you drink, it might be your stress, it might be the equilibrium around your mental or spiritual health. So we do that. We've had a million lifetime guests in the history of our company, and it's just a great path. It's a great. We offer a really interesting experience where, again, you can have that terrific resort environment with spa, great cuisine, great facilities, alongside a real deep dive, thorough and thoughtfully around your health.
Okay, so I want to bring the two threads of this conversation back together. So we're talking about, you know, the sort of the lifespan, health span gap as relates to gender. We're talking about these experiences and these sort of products that are out there to sort of help people address their lifespan and health span. But if we're looking at longevity gaps, income is a huge one, right? So the stat I have here, this is the Journal of American Medical Association, a study from 2016, found that life expectancy gap between the richest and poorest 1% of Americans was 14.6 years for men and 10.1 for women. So insane, huge gap, right? Which makes perfect sense. And the question, I guess, is, so what can we do to sort of, we can create great experiences for people who have the resources to go get them, but what can we do to sort of address this much larger population that maybe doesn't have the resources to access those solutions? And I'll throw it just to anybody who wants to jump. Jim, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I feel a tremendous responsibility. We have now gathered the largest data set on the vaginal microbiome as it relates to broader health outcomes like cervical cancer progression, STI acquisition, preterm birth, IVF outcomes. So for me, I have to think about, as I build this data set, what am I learning? What are the insights? And how can I make those insights accessible to not just our direct-to-consumer customers that are coming to us and can pay via cash? And so we're thinking about the insights. For example, if I find a marker in our data that is predictive of cervical cancer, then I want to go to a LabCorp and say, let's build a really cheap PCR that any woman can go, and if they have an abnormal pap smear, they can now test for this marker. So it's really thinking about, as I build for the 1%, what am I learning and how can I properly stratify the data so that I can scale my learnings and get them to the right people who can, you know, might not be able to afford Evie. But our mission is for not every woman who wants the best healthcare to have to come to Evie, but have access to the best healthcare because Evie existed, and we are constantly fueling those insights into distribution to reach every type of female.
Yeah, so I've been doing this for a while, started at Restore. My mission is to democratize all of these things. We got a lot of rich customers, I'm not going to lie, but we have a lot of folks at every income range. And it starts, first of all, with our brand, Humanot. Our company wakes up every day and says to each other, were you a Humanot today? Now, I'm not going to define all of that, but let me just tell you, if you were a Humanot today, you did all the cool things that make you a cool person. So you should all want to be a Humanot, but most of those things are not expensive. Did you go for a walk with someone you cared about? Did you have a meaningful connection? Did you eat a little bit better? I mean, a lot of times these choices are not necessarily expensive. Now, there are expensive interventions. You can do things like plasmapheresis, but these are things that you do when you've got the first 90% of things figured out. You don't start there. You don't start with all these fancy Brian Johnson sort of blood boy kind of things. Those are the last 1%. So we talk about get the fundamentals right, make it a part of your lifestyle, be a Humanot, and then when you get those dialed in, you can do some of the sort of really cool, like 1% type of things. And I will also say that everybody has to make a choice. How are you going to spend your time and money? What is more expensive to spend your time and money on? Your health span, your vacation, the next expensive bag? Like, yeah, we all do that. How much time do we spend on social media? How much, I'm not saying any of those things are bad. If you take good food away from me, like, you might as well shoot me. I like a good margarita every now and again. So I don't think you got to be perfect. But a lot of these choices don't cost money. You just got to make it accessible, and you got to make it desirable. And so I would ask all of you, were you a humanot today? And hopefully you can say yes in one way or another.
The good news is we all have access to technology. You know, and our three businesses are not inexpensive, right? So, but everybody has information and technology. I would say, however, part of the fear is there's a lot of noise. In this space, there's a ton of noise. I mean, there are mercenaries and there are missionaries, and you have to wade your way through it. You know, there's a lot of monthly subscriptions out there, and a lot of things that show up in your mailbox, and a lot of headline grabbing and ambulance chasing, and a lot of information out there. I think that'll settle down over time a little bit, and I do think clearly, as a society, we'll have access to information, we'll have access to technology. As Jim mentioned, there are other aspects, outdoors and sleep and nutrition, certain things that don't cost money if we can find our way to the right information and find our ways to the right prioritization of all that.
I also think agents will play a huge role in this. Like, you can train an agent and say, you know, this is who I am, this is what I'm experiencing, these are my very basic test results. What could potentially be happening? And give me 3 different protocols that are X amount of money that could have the highest impact on my health, and start reaching people through that, which is completely free.
That's great. Okay, we're down to just like 2.5 minutes left. So sort of a lightning round here. I've been to Humanot. I've been to Canyon Ranch in Tucson, both of which have a lot of really cool technology. There's a lot of like new technology. You know, there are apps. There are things that buzz that you hold up to your vagus nerve in your neck to calm yourself down. There are vibrating red light beds. There are all these different things, and it's amazing, right? And I'm curious, just to throw it out to just jump in, whoever wants to. What's the most exciting sort of tech gadget in this space that you guys are legitimately excited about its potential?
Yeah, you guys want to jump in?
I mean, you got a lot of them. Pick one.
Listen, I'm all about the fundamentals. Get the fundamentals right. That's 90% of it. Sleep, movement, nutrition, cognitive health, a couple other things, connection. Focus on those things. Then you can get into the 1% of things. I'll tell a story. I had a friend who came to me and said, "Hey, Jim, I'd like a prescription for rapamycin." And I was like, "Dude, I'm sorry, we're not going to do that for you." And he looked at me and he was like, kind of hurt. "Why?" And I said, "Well, I'm your friend, so I can say it this way. You're 40 pounds overweight. We talk about your sleep all the time. I haven't seen you in the gym in 4 months. Get that stuff right, and then we'll talk about the cool stuff." And then it's kind of a budget thing. If you want to go really cool, we're going to launch plasmapheresis. We're going to literally drain all of your blood plasma, go through a filter, replace it with albumin, get rid of all the microplastics, all the metal, all the dead cells in your body. That's super cool. You do not start there, though. That's kind of the last thing you do. That's not the first thing you do. So we could talk about 100 really cool interventions, but just prioritize, stick with the fundamentals. A lot of it is free. My favorite health intervention is the sauna for 30 nights at night with my wife. That's my favorite one. I like a lot of other things, but that is by far my favorite one.
Anyone else?
Aspirationally, I wish I was just a fundamentals person, but I completely forget about the fundamentals and I go for the gadgets. I love all types of gadgets. I'm currently obsessed with the hyperbaric chamber. But I think you're completely right. I need to get everything else before I jump into all the shiny things. But I love gadgets.
I agree. I agree with you both. I think the basics, continuous glucose monitor is great. If you're checking on nutrition, VO2 max testing, great. I tend to kind of the biohacking stuff. Whatever you see at the biohacking place today, you'll see something different a year from now. So I kind of stick with the tried and true.
Awesome. I think we're out of time, but thank you everybody for being here, and thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.